Come read with me. We're reading from my book, my memoir, Six of One, Half a Dozen the Other. And this chapter is We'll Work for Food. Mama often quoted the Bible to motivate us to do what we needed to do. Sometimes her quotes were slightly out of context. She especially favored the verse that said, "If you don't work, you ought not to eat also." Of course, the verse in 2 Thessalonians 3:10 referred to adult men, but it was what she used to keep us working. Work was a huge part of our life. Everyone worked, from the oldest to the youngest. There was something for everyone to do. We were required to work as part of living. When I distributed my first draft of this book to the family, her comment was, "If I had realized that you kids played so much, I would have made you work more." Heaven forbid. As it was, we were overworked already. We children were primarily responsible for the housework. Each of us had a job to do that was suitable for our age. The younger kids had it the easiest because there weren't too many jobs they could do. But they could do things like picking up clothes off the floor or helping one of the older kids with their job. The floor was always needing to be swept, so we learned to get into all the corners with the broom. We didn't have a dustpan, so after the floor was swept and the dust and trash were in a pile, we put a sheet of newspaper on the floor, stepped on the two corners to hold it to the floor, and swept all the debris onto the paper. Then we folded the paper and trash together and threw it into the trash can. As I got older, I began to take the initiative with the housework. I like a clean house. It was not unusual for me to get into a whirlwind of cleaning fever and clean the entire house while the parents were out. This was sometimes hard to do with all the younger kids running in and out, so I would send them outside to play while I worked. The boys, though, were not always cooperative. One time I had to just finish cleaning, and Bert sat himself in a chair in the living room and had a glass of milk. He didn't pick up his glass but set it on the clean floor. I asked him to remove it because I had just cleaned, but he wouldn't. So when he went back outside, I locked the door. Guess who got into trouble when Mama came home? No, not Bert. I got disciplined. Sometimes life is just unfair. Once I got railed on because I rearranged the furniture. I had to put it all back the way it was. Another time it was because I used bleach on the rubber tile floor. I did not know the bleach would take the finish off. Oops. We not only had much of the upkeep of the house, the cooking, the laundry, but in the summertime, we had to work out in the sweltering valley heat to earn money for our school clothes in the fall. The summer was filled with fruit and vegetable picking and processing. If there was money to be made, we did it. It was usually Mama who took us into the fields to work. She said that when Daddy cut grapes, he could cut 500 trays a day, which was far beyond what any of the rest of us could do. I was doing good to make 50 or 90 at 77 cents a tray. In all the years I worked in the grapes, Daddy did not. I never got a chance to see that 500 tray example. When I was just a toddler, the family worked picking prunes. We didn't use daycare. There was no daycare. Working was a family exercise. Everyone went into the fields. When it came time to go home at the end of the day, the family was nearly home when someone noticed that Joyce was missing. They had to turn the car around and go back to the orchard to get her. Cutting grapes for raisins was the last job of the summer we did before returning to school. Occasionally, the school would delay school so that the school district would delay school so that the students who worked in the fields could help get the raisins in on the trays before the rains came. The Central Valley is considered to be the breadbasket of the world, as the Salinas Valley is considered to be the salad bowl of the world. Crops are big business, and the vineyards are crucial not only for raisins, but for table grapes and wine. Timing is crucial. It was usually late August when the temperatures still hovered in the low hundreds. It was the best time for the grapes to dry in the hot sun. If the fall rains came too early, the raisins were usually ruined by mold from the moisture. It was always a race for time with the vineyards. Often the dried raisins in the rolled-up papers would be loaded into the trucks hours or even minutes before the rains began to fall. Our day would begin early. As soon as the dawn was light enough to see, We were in the vineyard with our metal grape pans and the short curved knives we used to separate the grapes from the vines. Near the end of the vineyard, we would find the paper trays stacked like a large ream of paper. We would take as many as we thought it would take to finish each row. It was a waste of time to have to walk all the way back to get trays if we were well into the row of grapes. We had to learn to be good at estimating by looking at how thick the grapes grew, how many trays it would take to finish the row. The job was usually done with teams of 2. One older person cut and one young child who would lay out and stack the trays. The job of the older child or adult was to fill the grape pan as quickly as possible and hand the filled pan to the younger child. While the pan was being filled with the warm, juicy Thompsons, the younger child would spread out the paper tray in the middle of the space between the row of vines. This area had been worked smooth by the owner of the vineyard and was not to be walked on. We got into a lot of trouble for walking in the rows. If we had to move from one side of the row to the other, we had to jump across so as not to put footprints in the middle.